Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor, where we're all just trying to survive in a rough world.
That was a deep conversation that we're about to introduce, but I'm just sighing because that was heavy stuff. Our guest today, as you know, we tape out of chronological order. Usually Karmela is the one that blows our cover. Today it is me. You're not going to want to miss this main schmooze. But a quick story about Karm. My car was out of commission. I won't say that it was an illegal alien who did not have a license nor insurance, but it was. Hit my beloved car. My car was in the shop. Everything got switched around. I came to the studio today. I did not have a mask. I said to Karmela as we were pulling up, "Do you have an extra mask?" Karmela, what did you say to me?
I have no memory of that.
You have no memory of that?
No.
It rhymes with duck.
What, the duck?
It rhymes with duck poo. Anyway, I thought that was very sweet of you. Why would you say that to me when I'm asking for a mask? Which, by the way, there happened to be a COVID testing site right in front of our studio, and the lovely man testing people, even though there's no one to be tested right now.
Probably somebody coughed into it.
He gave me a free mask.
A used one, Joel? A used one?
All I did was ask for a mask. It wasn't
Joel, how can you be so irresponsible? How can you be so
irresponsible?
You cannot get into this building without a mask.
It's basically proven. I don't want to get all Joe Rogan on you, but it's basically proven that these masks do nothing at this point.
Joel, what is wrong with you? Arden believes in them firmly, and she's an MD.
Yeah, she's an MD. If I came to her with a compound fracture in my thigh bone,
that's my daughter.
My thigh bone was scratching her chin because it was out of my leg. She would tell me to take a Tylenol. I love you, Arden. You're a great doctor. But having an MD means nothing. She will now call my mother.
Means everything.
She'll now call my mother and tell me to edit this out along with my 5 nieces. Listen, you nieces, you're lucky you got out of Columbia and MIT in time. Alive. Because coming up next, you're going to hear from the author of Conspiracy U. His name is Scott Shay. He happens to be an entrepreneur who started his own bank, Signature Bank, which not a lot of people can say. And he could be doing a lot of other things, but he is a thought leader and wrote a phenomenal book, and that is coming up on the flip side of this break. If you got a Valium, you might want to take it. We'll be right back with the main schmooze.
Do you want to help my son? His company, Content Partners Media, specializes in brand video and content creation for innovative companies and others. Please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com and hire him. I repeat, please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com.
Welcome back to Surviving the Survivor. It's time now for the main schmooze.
Karen Elaine Johnson, Karmela. Who is that? I'll give you 3 guesses. I'll give you 2 guesses. I'll give you 1 guess.
I have no idea.
Take a wild guess.
His secretary.
Karen Johnson. No. And I think secretary is pejorative these days. I think you would say an administrative assistant. Karen Elaine Johnson is better known as Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I heard it.
She co-opted a Jewish name to kind of propel herself in her comedic career, which seems to work. And then she took a lot of crap. Were you offended by what she said? Do you know what she said?
We are not going there right now.
We'll go there in a moment. And the reason we're going to go there in a moment is we've got one of the great thinkers of our generation on the show today. His name is Scott Shay. Scott, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Great to have you, Scott. Let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Scott Shay's 3rd book, Conspiracy U, a case study, illustrates how prestigious institutions of higher education, like Northwestern, which he attended, and MIT, which my niece just graduated from, and Columbia, where my other nieces went to. I went to a lower level school, Brandeis University, which is guilty of this too. How they have lost their way, sacrificing academic integrity and trustworthy scholarship in favor of conspiracy theories. Scott is not only a thought leader, but he's the co-founder and chairman of Signature Bank, well known as one of the best banks in New York for private business owners, and a well-respected, as I mentioned, thought leader and distinguished leader in the Jewish community. Carm, one of the problems with this podcast is every week now we've got someone who's within range of my age, and they are chairmen of banks, they're Harvard astrophysicists, and then you've got me. So it's taking a toll on me mentally, but I'll do what I can.
Darling, I'll take you any day.
I will do what I can. I'm sure Scott's annual salary and my annual salary diverge just slightly.
Stop the lamentations.
But I will live with it. I will live with it.
Not how we measure ourselves, though.
No.
Scott knows a thing or two about higher education. He earned a BA in economics and a master's in management from Northwestern University. He's quoted as saying, and I thought this was important, so I'm going to include this right now, the undertaking, this is his quote, the undertaking to write the book has taken me over 2 years, an honor I did for my late father, who after surviving the Holocaust and its horrors, instilled the importance of both my faith in God and Jewish self-determination. Conspiracy Use started as a 2,500-word essay about lessons that Scott learned from his father. Scott, welcome to Surviving the Survivor. We have that in common. As you know, Karmela is a Holocaust survivor. One thing I want to mention, so every year I was thinking about this. I don't usually think about podcasts until I'm sitting in this seat, but Karmela does a documentary for school-age children every year called Names Not Numbers, where she's interviewed about her survival in the Holocaust. And it occurred to me, I never really thought much about the name until I read excerpts of your book and listened to you speak. And I think it is important in this podcast to name names because there's a lot of insanity out there. And I would like to start, and we can get to Whoopi Goldberg, with a guy named Dr. Arthur Butz. Never heard of this guy till I listened to you on YouTube. He is a professor of electrical engineering at Northwestern University and went to a shabby little university himself known as MIT. And in the 1970s, this guy wrote a book called The Hoax of the 20th Century. He is a Holocaust denier, and he is still teaching at Northwestern. Is that right, Scott?
100%. He's teaching a required class.
How does this happen? And how, I mean, there are a lot of Jewish donors to these universities. There's seems like there should be a lot of influence. How is a guy like this tenured for 40-something years and still teaching at this school?
Well, Joel, you asked, there's a lot of questions in what you asked. So putting it together, I mean, let me just start from the first of Arthur Butz, and then I'm going to get to the second, which is, how does this happen at universities? Because I actually, since the book, did research during the book, and I've learned some more things since the book came out. So you've got a guy, Arthur Butz. He came out as a Holocaust survivor, as a Holocaust denier. And I didn't give him a lot of thought, to be perfectly honest. I thought, this is stupid. It's ridiculous. Who can believe this? But and I thought this was over. Like, there's no issue. But then I started to realize 11% of Americans under 40 believe that the Holocaust was somehow caused by the Jews. And 15% agree with Butz that it was either a myth or it was greatly exaggerated. That is remarkable. I mean, 1 in 10, 1 in 7-ish, right? Unbelievable. And I sort of couldn't get my hands around it. So I actually read his book, 400 pages. It is like jumping into a cesspool without goggles. It is a terrible experience, but I did it because I had to understand what he was thinking. And here's what surprised. Well, here's what surprised me. Two things. Number one, he claims not to be anti-Semitic. That's the thing today. Nobody's anti-Semitic. They just happen to hate Jews, but they're not anti-Semitic. Right. No, not us.
Yeah.
But he says he's an anti-Zionist at heart, essentially. Mm-hmm. That Zionists. So here's the problem with being a Holocaust denier and being a professor at Northwestern University and having some academic training is that there are tons of facts. There are facts like there are tens of thousands of documents that were spread across, that were not spread, that were discovered in Europe, documenting the Holocaust. We have the minutes of the Wannsee conference in 1942 that took place January 20th, 1942, explaining the final solution, how it was going to be done. We have lots of testimony of people who confessed to killing Jews, murdering Jews, running concentration camps, being guards, et cetera, et cetera. So what does Arthur Butz do? So here's the two things I learned that surprised me. One is he claims not to be an anti-Semite, just an anti-Zionist. And two, that the way he pulls this together is with conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. So a conspiracy theory goes around the facts. In other words, there are lots of documents. Well, Zionists must have planted them. These evil Kabbalah people with lots of money planted these documents. Their testimony, well, he explains that away. There's one or two Jews who were just tangentially involved in the Nuremberg trials. Not much. Nobody who played a major role. But these Jews were so smart that they bamboozled, they tricked, they hoodwinked, using some of his words, people into confessing. They convinced pure, innocent Nazis who would never think of doing anything evil to confessing to crimes against humanity that they never even imagined committing. That's how bad these Zionists are. This is Arthur Butz.
This is a tenured professor currently at Northwestern, and this was his quote. He refers to them as innocent Nazis, as Scott just said, who are basically tricked by the Jews who are out to get them. Now, let me just, before Karmela has her hand raised, so we know the question's coming, even though it's her show. Scott, let me just warn you, Karmela is a fire plug. And for about 3 weeks, I've heard, Joel, I am so depressed reading this book. I am so depressed. I don't know if I can do this, blah, blah. Stop getting me anti-Semitic stuff, blah, blah. Anyway, Karmela is a diehard Zionist. I do a terrible impression, but I've been doing it for years. We lived in Israel, and she is worked up. So, Karmela, with that?
No. I am trying. The book is here. It's terrific research. It describes the fallacies.
Conspiracy U.
Everything that is that you did a yeoman's job on this, and you really wrote a beautiful review of the whole anti-Semitic, the whole conspiracy, what the conspiracy theories and so forth. But I want to ask you, step back one step. Do you really, I have the feeling that we are late, like the horse left the barn already. I have the feeling that, and I was alive in the 70s, I was born in 1939, so where the heck were we when these universities started to breed these anti-Semitic and anti-Israel people? Where were we then? And then I read what your solutions are, okay? I'm going to give now a long spiel here. I can't help it because I am concerned.
Told you she's fired up.
So my first question is...
Anderson Cooper, make it quick though.
Okay.
Time is of the essence.
Do you, I have other areas that I'm concerned, but do you think that this particular issue, it's almost like we now have to have nuclear solutions because it's so...
I think the question is...
dangerous and so advanced and so it's like it's a virus. It's like COVID before the vaccine.
I believe your question is, where the hell were we in the 70s when a guy Butz was getting tenured, and now it's gone out of control?
No. Okay. My question is today that it is in most of academia, especially in Ivy Leagues, that breed the next generation of leaders. What can we do now in your perception and your studying of this? Or did you think that far? Because you are talking about we have to give them the facts. You know, and I know that facts can be distorted with conspiracy theories or without conspiracy theories. So I'm not satisfied with giving them the facts. I don't know what else to do. I'm asking you, since you really dived into this.
So here's the thing, and I'm going to make your question sharper, and then I'm going to try to do some answering of it. But I'm going to, because I want to show the other side for 1 second, because it's important in getting.
Okay, just take over like it's your book.
So I gave you an example of the far right, but also it's much more endemic. There aren't that many people on the far right in the universities anymore. They
far left, you are going to say now.
So now I just want to give you a quote from that he wrote when he was a professor, Stephen Saleta, who is one of the people that shows up in the book, but he's just one. There's plenty, but it's just a quote because he totally agrees. And this is what happens on the far left, and I show this time and again, is that the far left, which is the dominant group on campus these days, ends up agreeing. Stephen Saleta writes, so I'm quoting him, which is the reason I'm opening the book. The Nazi Holocaust in Europe seems a direct antecedent to Israel's founding. There were plans from the outset of Zionism to rid the promised land of its indigenous population. The problem with the remembrance of the Nazi Holocaust, these are his words, Professor Saleta, is that it happens in isolation from relevant historical events and worse from their ongoing consequences. It's not very useful if a corresponding genocide is taking place as with the Palestinians at the hands of Israel. This is a professor, books published by Duke University Press. There are other books here cited by Stanford University Press. These were peer reviewed. So what are facts?
Who are the peers?
Other professors are saying this sort of stuff. I read a book, which I talk about in here, by another professor at Northwestern, Jessica Winigar, who wrote a book. You can't actually even, I'm naming names like Joel asked.
Please do.
You can't actually even understand the book unless you hate Israel and think that Jews are all plotting against the world. So sadly, sometimes when I've been cited or mentioned in the far right, they have this thing where there's 3 parentheses on each side. On the far left, they have this other thing. It ends up, which I didn't pick up, but it's quotation marks. So in her book, campus rabbis are in quotation marks because they can't really be campus rabbis. They've got to be doing something else. That's Zionist community in parentheses.
So Jessica Winigar, what is her thesis when it comes to this sort of stuff?
That Israel is really, really bad. Zionism is the worst thing you can imagine. That somehow Zionism, Ferguson, George Floyd, all of it is in some bouillabaisse that's hard to explain. But here's the thing. She thinks that Zionists are plotting against anthropologists. That's how amazing it is that actually in the midst of taking over the whole world, Zionists are spending their time oppressing people in anthropology departments. And there's a whole book that she co-authored on this. And she did extensive evidence, found 2 professors who had trouble getting tenure, ultimately did, and claims that it was all because of Zionist oppression. And she says in her book she could find no one who actually had any career consequences or had anything negative happen to them, but they think it is. And so they're living in fear of student moles. So here's a book by a professor who heads, by the way, and I'm getting long round to your question, Karmela.
Take your time.
The Alice Kaplan Institute at Northwestern University, a woman who during her life donated what is the equivalent of many millions of dollars to Zionist causes, headed now by someone who thinks Zionists are really evil, who thinks they're plotting against them, can provide no evidence, but with interviews of other anthropologists who are also convinced that Zionists are plotting against them, is convinced that this is an evil. Now, normally, if someone has a fear or hates a group and book length research is done and there's no evidence of it, you would say maybe what you need is not a book, but I don't know, a therapist, or this or that, whatever you need. You're not finding, you need something else other than saying it's a conspiracy. And yet that's what's going on campus. It's become this anti-Israelism, and I have reasons for it, is so that we probably need even a longer podcast, but it's so endemic that people don't push back against it. And if you do, not only does a Twitter mob come at you, but a real mob comes after you. And did
you get any threats since you wrote the book?
I don't want to go into that exactly, to be perfectly honest. But I want to just say one other thing, which is that the folks who are donors, the folks who are on boards, and I've spoken to some of them, and in the book I talked about speaking to some of the Northwestern University trustees. There's not courage. Let me just put it that way.
Why?
There's not courage.
Why? I mean, these are highly successful people who are, leaders in whatever field they're in or whatever entrepreneurial endeavor they took up. Why are they such wusses?
Good question. I don't have an answer. I will just say this. In the United States, I spoke to on a top 20, the chairman of the board of trustees of a top 25 university who is Jewish. I don't want to mention names, so I'm being a little vague. Mm-hmm. And I know he is devoted to Jewish causes. And I asked him literally, I cited something happening on the campus that he's involved with. And I got a lot of words and no answer, a wishy-washy answer. I asked directly when there was a BDS resolution going on at Northwestern. I asked some of the directors who were trustees at the time, some of whom actually contacted me, and nobody was willing to stand up. And my point is that we don't have knighthoods in the United States. So being a trustee of a prestigious university is probably as close as you can get to being a knight or being a lord or something like that. And people really, really like it. And they put that sometimes ahead of their principles, because in some of these cases, and by the way, non-Jews as well at Northwestern during the BDS resolution, I spoke to two. I can't remember at this point whether they reached out to me or I reached out to them. And, they just sort of think it'll all blow over. What happens on campus stays on the campus. But what we've learned, sadly, is it's not like Vegas. What happens on campus is now spreading and infecting all of society. And conspiracy theories, I used to think that people who went to college were less susceptible to being anti-Semitic. But if you read Karmela, you read the book, you'll get to the point where stunningly, people who go to college and people who have advanced degrees are much more likely to harbor anti-Jewish sentiment, even when it doesn't impact or relate to Israel, which is breathtaking.
For those of you who don't know, BDS is Boycott, Divest, Sanction, which is a movement afoot at a lot of top universities. Columbia is one of them, to basically boycott Israel and its statehood. Real quick though, Karmela, and then I'm going to let you jump in. Scott, I think before we go on, I think it's important. You write that conspiracy is about more than anti-Jewish conspiracy theories. It's about the fundamental corruption of the pursuit of truth that is taking place in too many parts of academia. Just very quickly, You differentiate and delineate between a conspiracy theory and a theory. How do you define that?
Yeah. So let me give an example that I think everybody can identify with these days or understand. You can have a theory about a conspiracy. For example, you can say that you have a theory that the COVID-19 virus was released accidentally from the Wuhan virology lab. Mm-hmm. And what you have to do to prove or disprove that theory is to get the facts, investigate, and decide one way or the other. Now, you may come to the point where you can't get all the facts because all the facts are not available, or they're not allowed by the regime or whatever. And then you have to say, I don't know for sure. But you can't do what Butz does, which is take any fact that goes against you, which is what happens. And I show this with other professors relating to Israel. Any fact that seems to contradict your theory and expand the theory around it, like Jews bamboozled these people, these pure innocent Nazis, into confessing to things they didn't do, or the like. But that happens with QAnon. That happens with other conspiracy theories too. For example, Alex Jones. Mm-hmm. He has a conspiracy theory. He created the conspiracy theory that there was no Sandy Hook massacre, that but he's confronted with the dead bodies. So he has to have a theory that these were paid actors, and any fact shown negates it. Now, one other critical thing about a conspiracy theory, and this I showed too, is that with the exception of some fanciful conspiracy theories like Paul is dead or Elvis is alive, they all are started by people with political agendas. In Alex Jones's case, he's against gun control. Be for it or against it, but you're not supposed to make up terrible conspiracy theories about it. And
do you think with Alex Jones, sorry to interrupt, but do you think with Alex Jones, I mean, he's a total lunatic. We know this. And Joe Rogan, unfortunately, gives him a platform. And he has his own platform. But do you think these people are so delusional that they believe these theories, or they just know that they have an agenda and they've got to boldface lie about it?
So I think it's a mix. I think many of the originators understand these are lies, but they're the best way to hack into someone or some group's head. So if I want to motivate people, if I can come up with, terrible theories about the other side, well, those three people can get at their political agenda. And indeed, I quote one big time BDS proponent who she admits, in the case of Jasper Poor, she admits she's making it up. But it's so important to get people to be anti-Israel that you can say that Jews are harvesting organs and say whatever you want, because what's most important is to get at the Jews and to get at Israel and to make sure there's no Jews from the river to the sea, to exterminate every Jew there. So that's more important. And by the way, go ahead.
I can feel, Scott, just so you know, so a few weeks ago, Karmela, we interviewed the grandson of a Nazi, and Karmela went off, rightfully so,
I didn't go off on the Nazi. I went off on the Jewish woman.
She did. But Karmela, I can feel this has nothing to do with you, Scott, but I can just feel, I know her long enough, I can feel the tension in her. So Karmela, let it out. What is top of mind?
Now you did what you always
cut
do.
You off and you forgot.
You cut me off as I want to. No, I know what I wanted to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? We had here Ben Ferencz, the last surviving prosecutor, 102-year-old, completely clear-minded. I don't know if you ever watched him being interviewed.
Last living Nuremberg prosecutor.
They want to give him the highest award right now. Now, he was there at the liberation of the camps. He saw the scene. I don't have to describe it to you. And yet, he's 102-year-old, and I'm getting to the main point. 102-year-old, and he still believes that make no war, obey the law.
His motto is law, not war.
Law, not war. Now, I was almost hearing a slight echo. Maybe I imagined it. But what you are saying, no BS, give me the facts. Right?
Well, I agree with that, but I do think you have to be prepared to make war if you have to.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, but unfortunately, I mean, Ferencz, Ben Ferencz, 100% under no circumstances, war is an option. You know, even a war of defense. He didn't speak of Israel per se. He spoke about the tribunal in Hague and stuff like that. But I think when you believe, because I see that you are a proponent of getting the facts out, and I may be cynical or was born at a different time or whatever it is. I think the facts can be magnificently distorted. The facts virtually, you work very hard on proving the facts. I am in my own head, even though I'm just a little grandma, I'm more of an activist. I'm saying, okay, the facts, nobody gives a damn about the other side, about the facts, the left or the right. Nobody cares. What are the things that we can do? Because I feel American Jews are in danger of the next generation being raised and educated by the left, the extreme left faculty of universities and Ivy League schools, where the elites come out of the Ivy League schools. And I think we are in danger already that this generation will be definitely not our friends.
Carm, let me flip the script on you for 1 second, and Scott will jump in. If you were currently the president of Northwestern, and to name another professor that Scott can tell us about, Dr. Stephen Thrasher, currently a professor at Northwestern, he believes that Israel is sending drones over Gaza to gas people. If you were the president of Northwestern today, how would you handle this situation, Karmela?
I cannot answer with a tremendous speed, but I would definitely stand up and say this is totally inaccurate. And I would say that, you see what I think the bottom line to all this is? The bottom line is that once the Germans killed the Jews, they were desperately seeking, I don't know what Butz's background is, but he must be influenced. They're desperately seeking all the time to make a moral equivalence between what they did to the Jews and what the Jews are doing to the Arabs. Okay? And I think that's one of the very basic underlying currents. This is Karmela's theory. I never wrote a book about it, or I never, but this is my feeling. And all these people are trying to, they cannot deal with Jewish power, okay? And the only way they can deal with Jewish power is that it's evil power. But the facts will not change it. That's what I'm trying to say.
So let me react to that, because there's a lot going on there, but I want to just say this. To the people who are propagating the conspiracy theories, nothing will change their mind.
No.
I agree with that. However, I do think, and I think the research is that there are a lot of people, and this is why I was talking about hacking. The purpose and use of conspiracy theories is to get other people involved and make them activists because they believe this false narrative. And so I still think in the United States that there are plenty of people who are still open to reason. I think there are plenty of people. If you give them the facts, I mean, people say that, and I've talked to people who believe that the Jews came from Eastern Russia or came from Eastern Europe and Russia and had nothing to do with the Middle East. Amazingly, they've never read the Hebrew scriptures or the Christian scriptures, but they don't understand what ingenuity is, and to be an indigenous people. Jews have been living for for whatever you want, archaeologically, even if you disbelieve the Bible and every word of it, there's archaeological evidence that Jews have been living in Israel and the land of Israel for 3,000 plus years, at least. So I've read a lot of what these folks write. And the problem is that if you're reading a book that was published by Stanford University Press or Jasper Puar's Duke University Press, she's a full professor at Rutgers, saying Jews are harvesting organs. They're using some sort of complex DNA, biological hacking to control Palestinians' bodies, et cetera, et cetera. And
what is her name again? What is her name?
Jasper Puar.
Puar.
She's in the book too, Puar. And I don't know, New Jersey taxpayer dollars are supporting her.
Mm-hmm.
I am a graduate of the graduate school.
And we grew up next, literally a stone's throw from Rutgers. That was even though I went to Brandeis, grew up watching these, and most of the people are going to be watching this are based in Jersey. So I think, if I may chime in, I think money talks, as they say. And I think one of the ways to stop this is to cut off the funding, if there's a way to do it, through donors. I mean, through philanthropists, through the people who are providing the money. Rutgers is sort of an exception because it is a state school. So for
example, you were mentioning that Qatar is sponsoring, paying
$500 million to Northwestern University.
That's unbelievable.
$500 million. Qatar.
And let me ask you, I mean,
and what you were emphasizing is without any kind of oversight or supervision or.
Well, they would claim not quite. Northwestern would say some, but the reality has been next to none. But I have to. Can I say one more thing about Rutgers?
You can say whatever you want.
Because that actually, Rutgers was a university against anti-Semitism until they rescinded that.
Mm-hmm.
So in May of 2021, when 4,500 rockets were landing on Israel, and Israel was defending itself, can't forget that, there were riots in places against Jews. As you know, 500 feet from where I'm sitting, maybe a little more, maybe 1,000 feet from where I'm sitting, there was a Jew who was wearing a kippah, wearing a yarmulke, who was attacked and had to go to the hospital. It was sent to the hospital and was in serious condition. You've heard about what happened in LA, in Skokie, in Miami. Jews were attacked. Nobody asked what their position was on Israel. Rutgers University put out a release condemning anti-Semitism and the attacks on Jews, because no mention of Israel. Because, by the way, if you try to say, which the far left says, that Israel's different than the Jews, then that should be fine. But the Twitter mob and the actual mob came at Rutgers so much that they rescinded that. And they said, we're sorry we insulted people. We can only mention anti-Semitism in the context of, and then there's a whole laundry list of other issues. Now, after the COVID virus appeared in the United States, there was anti-Asian prejudice, and people rightly condemned it. But they didn't say we can't talk about anti-Asian discrimination or oppression if we don't list a long laundry list. I mean, essentially, it's an erasure. What Rutgers did was an erasure, a total erasure of anti-Semitism. It actually can't exist by itself. It can only be mentioned as a quick clause in a whole laundry list. This is now the reason it also piqued my attention is that here's the Northwestern connection. The president of the university was the provost of Northwestern before he was promoted, before he got the job as president of Rutgers. And he was there during the whole BDS brouhaha at Northwestern. So this is going on everywhere in academia. Anti-Semitism is being erased. You can't actually be anti-Semitic. It's sort of what I was starting out with. Because people are just against Israel or just against Jews, but no, we're not anti-Semitic. And you can be for banning every single Jewish organization from participating. with other non-Jewish organizations, like it happened at NYU or is happening at the University of California. But no, you're not anti-Semitic. It's astounding, and no one in the academic community is actually standing up for that. Everything I've done is Googleable, but everything I've just said is Googleable.
Well, the president of Rutgers is Jonathan Halloway, and Jonathan, what are you going to do about it? So you need to answer to the people of the great state of New Jersey, and to my mother, by the way.
His mother, because I'm a graduate of Rutgers graduate school.
I mean, this is just this stuff is just mind blowing. Let me ask you a question. You think if I reached out to Dr. Arthur Butz, he would come on this podcast, or he's too much of a coward to come on and confront?
He would come. I'm sure.
He would come on? No, I'm not. Do you think so, Scott?
Well, I've done a lot of research into him, and I've read most everything he's written. Mm-hmm. So I'm giving you a more of a professional than an emotional answer. Uh-huh. I would say probably not. Because he only likes to go in friendly venues these days.
Just like a coward. Just like a coward would.
By the way, we had on our podcast, I got an education since we started it during COVID, Joel and I started this podcast. I really got an education. And one of the people we had on was Dara Horn.
Yeah.
And
big fan.
Yeah, but anyway,
she wrote a book called "People Love Dead
Jews." He knows.
Our audience doesn't. Our tens of millions of viewers and listeners do not know.
Tens of millions. Anyway, what she said, that she really doesn't like the concept of the Jew being the canary in the mine. Did you pick that up?
Canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, she doesn't like that. I actually mentioned that metaphor in my book, but she's right, because it's not so it's not so good for the canary.
Absolutely. And why the hell should we be the canary?
Here's an interesting stat that I think people are unaware of that Scott mentions as well. Jewish people represent just 2% of the American population, which most people do not believe that is the case.
Why?
Especially
you know why?
Yeah, because they're conspiracy theorists. Why? Because we have a lot of power.
No, we don't have a lot of power. We have a lot of
influence.
Like he's a living example.
100%.
No, my husband also the same thing. His parents never went to college. Both his parents, my husband of 60 years, his father, and he and his two brothers, two are doctors and one is an architect. The point is that we valued, until very recently, we valued education.
So, Carm, you excellently cut me off.
On purpose.
So Jews represent just 2% of the American population. However, more than 50% of hate crimes committed in America are against Jews. This is according to FBI statistics. Now, real quick, I'm going to run through these because I think this is all important to get it out there. Robert Bowers, he was the guy who opened fire at the Tree of Life. He was active online with white supremacist groups posting Holocaust denial conspiracy theories. The guy who shot up the Chabad house in Poway, I don't know if it was Chabad, but it was a synagogue in Poway near San Diego.
No, it was a Chabad house.
Similar background. The main Jersey City attacker, David Anderson, he posted conspiracy theories advanced by some black Hebrew Israelites who claim that Jews are devilish imposters. And then most recently, we had our little hostage situation in Colleyville, Texas. He was trying to get this woman, Siddiqui, freed from prison. She claims that the Jews were behind 9/11. So this is the sort of stuff we're dealing with. Now, I get that, Siddiqui and David Anderson, they can be, complete idiots, unhinged, whatever their issue is. But again, we're bringing this back to Northwestern. We're bringing this back to Columbia. We're bringing this back to Rutgers, to Stanford. And Karmela was the one who started out all worked up about this, but I think about this, and I have young children, and I'm like, how can I send my kids to these colleges one day? How? How can you do it?
You don't. You won't send them. You're going to look into it.
I mean, Scott, my nieces, my sister has 5 daughters, and they all went to either Columbia or MIT. Smart kids. But they grew up modern Orthodox, and they had to deal with people spewing anti-Semitism at them when all this BDS stuff was bubbling up a few years back. So
when one of our nieces had her graduation, everybody was so proud. Columbia, beautiful sunny day, the cap and gown. And then somebody stood up and he says, the Palestinians in the open prison, open air prison, and then from there it went to worse.
I'm thinking about it too, though. Here and Scott's our guest, and he's sitting over there silent. But just to bring it back,
we do this a lot. Talk to each other and ignore the person.
To bring it back to Whoopi Goldberg, Scott. I mean, it's kind of like a catch-22. It's a weird situation because I think what's going to go on now with my experience in the media, there was so much backlash. Now they suspended her, right? She said something that was blatantly either ignorant and or anti-Semitic. But now those who will support Whoopi Goldberg are going to say, well, the Jews have so much power, they got her suspended from ABC News. So on the one hand, it's like the Jews...
lose, no win situation.
So I don't know. What's this? Can I send my kids to college? I guess that's the question.
Well, that's a complicated question. Actually. I'm the first one, Karmela's hinting at, I'm the first one on either side of my family to go to college. So, and I loved what I got at Northwestern University in my day. Mm-hmm. But I do think that, I think this all's really started from colleges and from the campus, because it's what's happening. You mentioning Sadiq, Dr. Afia Siddiqui. Mm-hmm. She actually got her degree from Brandeis, as you may know. Mm-hmm. And
they come home.
That does not
they
surprise
come
me.
home to roost.
There's no more liberal institution than Brandeis, which, by the way, I've not donated a single penny, nor will I, because of that. But go on. Not that I'm on the other side of the aisle. I just don't trust what's being taught there. Sorry.
So, I mean, she actually not only believes that 9/11 was caused by the Jews, but she, at her trial, thought that the whole trial was masterminded by Isreal. That's where the blame for her false conviction came, quote unquote, false conviction. She wanted jurors DNA tested to prove they weren't Jewish, because then they couldn't be fair if they were Jewish.
DNA tested.
DNA tested.
Her and Hitler.
Yeah, that's what she wanted. And if you, so my point is that, let me give you one other example. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, don't worry. We are unstructured here.
I don't have anybody here to interrupt me, so I'm interrupting myself. Angela Davis is probably the leading proponent of anti-Israelism. She imagines also that everything bad in the world somehow emanates or is intersectionalized with Jews. Gaza is Ferguson, even though Ferguson and Gaza have nothing in common, but they're both on the planet Earth. Nothing in common. Ferguson is, by the way, Gaza is supported by Qatar and the like. Having said that, she's from Brandeis University, and she's putting out these conspiracy theories. So you have people going to wonderful universities, and it's no protection against them spewing forth this stuff. And I really wonder, I referred to this a little earlier. There was a study done of 1,800 people, 900 in each category. And they put them in different slots. So they looked exactly alike. And the lead people here weren't even Jewish. They were just interested in this question. They asked parallel questions of each group. One, should the military allow Sikhs to wear turbans? To the other group, should Jews be permitted to wear yarmulkes in the military? One related to, should companies have to make accommodations for Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath on Saturday? Number two, should companies have to make accommodation for Jewish observant of Orthodox Jew or observant Jews observance of the Sabbath on Saturday, etc. I'm not going to go through the whole study. If someone went to college, they were 5 percentage points more likely to take the anti-Jewish position. And if they went to graduate school, they were 15 percentage points more likely to take the anti-Jewish position. So this is what I was saying. Education is instilling anti-Semitism. That is mind-blowing to me. I think it's an indictment of academia. And that's why I'm so worried. That's why I spent all my free time writing this book, because if we don't do something, I don't know if it's a nuclear option like you're talking about, Karmela, but
I didn't mean a nuclear bomb.
I know.
I meant a drastic,
it might not be a bad idea.
A drastic, gigantic something, because I think the world we know that anti-Semitism is.
By the way, Scott just helped me decide definitively. I'm starting my 3-year-old boy in jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to have him become a UFC lightweight champion instead of pursuing any academic options. But one of the things, I mean, this is where you get into big arguments with the First Amendment. But I mean, what is allowed under academic freedom? Is anything allowed under the quote unquote, label of academic freedom? Yeah,
this is the canard. This is the canard that is put on. So if someone decides to attack Israel on campus, they claim it's academic freedom, First Amendment, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But if you try to defend Israel on campus, mm-hmm. or you try to defend Israel in academia, and I talk to professors who are working their way up and hoping to get tenure. They don't say anything about Israel because they know it'll be held against them if they actually have some sort of pro-Israel leanings. It's already becoming clearer and clearer that when professors on campuses in New York or in the United States are asked to serve on doctoral examination panels in Israel. Mm-hmm. It's becoming harder. I wouldn't want to. I don't think you'd have a hope in hell of getting tenure if you were a Zionist at the Northwestern Anthropology Department. You certainly probably wouldn't even survive graduate school there. Where Professor Butz went to school in the American Studies Department at NYU, it's sort of a anti-Israel cheering squad. So it's used again one way, not the other. Jews don't have freedom to express themselves. They shouldn't have the right. They should be the only group in the world without the right to national self-determination. And if Jews don't exactly agree with the far right, the far left, should I say, JVP, they're expelled. I give the example of Norman Finkelstein, who was, he's pro-Hamas. He's really as anti-Israel as one could get, but he happened to trip up once and say the truth, just a piece of the truth, and they threw him out. Vilified him, called him Alan Bush.
But there is also, I think in this conversation we should mention it, that the far right thinks that we are not white.
Yeah.
And the far left thinks we are only white.
Well, the way I put it in the book, and I go into this in some detail, is the far right thinks we're fake white, and the far left thinks we're hyper white. That's sort of what I explain in the book, and I do a little bit of the theory, and I go through another thing, a rabbit hole that we shouldn't climb into for the remaining minutes of this, which is critical race theory.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the issues. It's coming from all directions, and it's so you quote. And I think this is important. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who wrote, "What starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews," which is important because on a much smaller scale, but topical today, look what's going on with Joe Rogan. I mean, my direct competitor. He is talking about...
He has fewer listeners, though.
Definitely. He has, he's had guests on. Obviously, he's taking a lot of heat right now for quote-unquote COVID misinformation and disinformation. The problem I have is that these people like Neil Young and Nils Lofgren and these other, kind of far left celebrities, they want to censor when they are threatened by what is being talked about. So again, it goes to your point, Scott. It's not just coming from the right, it's coming from the left. And it's like a tangled web. And honestly, after talking to you for an hour, I have no idea what the answer is, other than to keep sending my kid to
Well,
jiu-jitsu.
you almost made me the president of a university.
Well, I almost did, but I mean, this is really fascinating.
I don't know what I would do.
My humble opinion, again, and it is where possible, especially at a place like Brandeis University, which Brandeis, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves. I mean, because that majority of those donations are coming from Jewish donors, and cut off the funding for these professors who are spreading this vile hate.
But here is the consolation. Right now, they're not building gas chambers, and
that you know of.
Right.
By the way, one quick
thing. I hope that we will have enough brain power to figure out how to, besides giving the fact, which I think is a very naturally a first step to give the fact.
Karmela, I want to make you real nervous real quickly for 1 second. So 10-second story. When I was at Brandeis as a freshman, they said, you'll never believe this, that NASA has a laboratory underneath Brandeis University. I didn't believe it. I worked for the newspaper. You go like 10 stories underneath the main campus building, and they had this lab that was built by NASA in like the 1960s to test like astronaut stuff, related to
So what has that got to do with the price of rice?
They could be testing gas chambers, 300 yards underneath Brandeis. So be careful.
This is our black humor. Don't get upset.
Be careful what I mean, this stuff has, the ability to spiral out of control very quickly, especially during times.
That's exactly where I was going. That the whole social climate is, and I don't say it lightly, psychotic. I like to use strong terms, but it's really, besides the Jewish issue, which is like, we have been the scapegoats for so long that they think it's a nice traditional thing to continue to use us as the scapegoats. But besides that, the culture is insane when you have to have, and I was working on Women's Lib way back when nobody else did, with Gloria Steinem and so forth. And now the head of the Supreme Court judge has to be a woman, and she has to be black. That, to me, is insanity to define the most important jurist in the country by these two qualifications. I mean, the country is going, what is it, in a bread basket? What is it going?
To hell. Hell in a handbasket.
Head in a head.
Carm, Scott has 2 minutes left on a busy schedule.
We let him talk?
Yeah, we will let him talk. Scott, two quick questions for you. Where will Bitcoin be a year from now?
Oh, my gosh. I think it could go down as low as 25,000 and be as high as 50, 60,000 again.
Do you believe it's here to stay? Is it here? Is it an asset that's going to be here for years to come?
I think that Bitcoin was the first app of blockchain. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it is going to be the
Bitcoin,
the long-term store value because of the energy usage issues and the like. And so I do think cryptocurrencies are here to stay.
Okay.
But Bitcoin, it takes a more nuanced answer.
You mean the blockchain technology is here to stay?
Blockchain technology is amazing. I was an early, I've been following this for a long time. Signature Bank, we started the first blockchain-enabled 24/7 money transfer system, and it's grown really, really dramatically. And we opened it at 12:01 a.m. on 12:01 a.m. on January 1st, 2019, and last quarter, $237 billion transferred on it.
Wow.
It's just remarkable because blockchain technology is really something new under the sun. But whether Bitcoin will be the final
star, the
final star, I don't know.
Is it too late? Should I have already purchased land in the metaverse, Scott?
Boy, I have no idea.
No idea.
People are asking me that more and more, though.
Well, about these things. I told somebody was very cute who said that somebody said, what if the electric grill grid collapses. Here goes your...
Scott, usually when I wrap, which is right now, this is when Karmela will go into some long tangential conversation, but I want to show everyone this book. I've also been...
Hold it for a minute longer.
Conspiracy U by Scott Shay. Read it. This book is one of the most important
very
books
educational.
that you will... Very disturbing.
And take a tranquilizer when you read it.
Scott, my mother, I'm 52 years old, and is constantly teaching me a lesson. She said, you never get off the podcast without asking someone how I can help. So, Scott... And let me just tell you a quick story. I'm going to ask you how I can help you. The last time I did this was with a Harvard astrophysicist who said he needs $100 million. But how can I help you?
For a telescope.
For a telescope. Scott, how can I help you?
Here's what you can do. Mm-hmm. You can buy a copy. You've got a copy of the book. You can buy another copy of the book. Mm-hmm. You can send it to your state senator, state legislator there and you can say, this is what my taxpayer dollars are doing, and I'm not happy. And you can give it to people who, in other places, in all candor, we're going to have to take action. I'm really proud I wrote the book. It was a lot of work, but if nothing comes of it, it was a vanity project. I really want something to come of it.
Something already has come of it because you are on a platform that's about to take off, and we are going to spread the word. We're going to spread it on social media. I'm going to try to spread it in media, in traditional media, legacy media, where I work part-time until I do get to Joe Rogan status. But, Scott, let's stay in close touch. Are you in New York these days? You're in New York.
I am in New York.
Okay.
New York.
That's our home away from home.
And I usually don't do this, but may you go from strength to strength.
Amen.
And Scott, when you are in Miami Beach, I will treat you to lunch at the Blue and Green Diamond, a.k.a. my parents' building. It's a lovely spot.
Sounds good. I hope to make it there. There's a Bitcoin conference coming up. A blockchain conference coming up there in April.
Oh, I actually want to go to that. So I'm going to reach out to you to find out about that. I'm interested as well.
What is that?
A blockchain conference.
Oh, blockchain.
So maybe we will meet then. But Scott, thanks so much. Again, the book is Conspiracy U. Buy it. You'll be disturbed, but it is important.
No, that was a brilliant idea to get copies and send them to these people.
We will be right back with the news schmooze.
Thank you and good luck.
Welcome back. It's time for the news schmooze.
We are not exactly lefties, but we are left-handed.
I hope my son is a lefty. We're back on camera, Carm, and I don't know where that... Oh, I was writing a note. Yeah, I am a lefty, and I hope my son is a lefty. I don't know yet. Carm, what do you think of Scott Shay? Very eloquent. That was actually more disturbing to me, I think, than it was to you.
Because I have been disturbed by it the last week since I've started reading his book.
I mean, how can you have a tenured professor?
No, don't do this. Don't do this. Let's go.
I'm going to get this guy on the show, and I'm going to see if he's man enough to come on the show.
Now, you know what,
and even though he's 77 or whatever,
he could be a child compared to me.
Yeah. Scott is a sweet man, but
very nice.
Yeah,
like a very well-intentioned, good guy. And very smart, but now I understand that his book makes sense. If you disseminate it to the right people and they bother, at least their assistant will read through it, then it makes sense, okay?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think we should get a movement afoot to do this.
Yes.
And we will try.
Yes.
On to the news schmooze. I thought this was interesting. I actually picked somewhat intelligent stories this time around.
Can't believe it. Judging by your past
This
record.
is a Johns Hopkins study basically saying that lockdowns in the U.S. and Europe had little or no impact in reducing deaths. They only reduced the mortality rate by about 0.2%, otherwise known as 0.2%. And found, this is Johns Hopkins now, which I'm sure has about 17 anti-Semitic professors, but it is kind of here or there.
Not in the med school.
They say that we find no evidence that lockdowns, school closures, border closures, and limiting gatherings have had a noticeable effect on COVID-19 mortality. Carm, do you think it was all a waste that we were cowering in our homes, in our apartments, not in our offices, but elsewhere?
May God forgive me. It worked for Roy and me. We didn't die from it because we didn't go anywhere. It was fun.
Sales of real estate in the metaverse topped $500 million last year, which you say, Karmela, in a country of 300-something million people is a drop in the bucket. They say that that investment could double this year. Real estate sites on the 4 major metaverse platforms reached 501 million, according to Meta Metric Solutions, saying that it will top 1 billion in 2022. I've been saying this for a few months now, that we should be buying fake land in a fake universe for a fake future, but you are not into it.
Maybe in the 22nd century.
On to the third story, related to the metaverse. And this is where our world is heading. So listen up, kids. It's not just anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism in universities. A woman in the UK said that she experienced a real horror play out in the virtual game Horizon Worlds. The game is called Horizon Worlds, which is developed by Meta. You know who that is?
Yes, that's Facebook.
It's like the artist formerly known as, like Prince. This is Meta, formerly known as Facebook. This woman, this blogger, says that within 60 seconds of joining, she was verbally and sexually harassed. 3 to 4 male avatars with male voices essentially, but virtually, gang raped her avatar. She details watching her avatar get sexually assaulted by a handful of male avatars who took photos and sent her comments like, "Don't pretend you didn't love it." The woman is vice president of metaverse research for Kabuni Ventures. It's an immersive technology company. So now we are already having our first rape and sexual assault in the metaverse. Did you think we would get here this quickly, Carm?
You know what? I will never, ever forget it. When I worked with real psychotics. Mm-hmm. This sounds exactly like that. They lived, they say the whatever's built the castles in Spain, the fantasy castles, mm-hmm. and the psychotics live in them. So this is like the metaverse, this castle in Spain.
The more I think about it, we really don't need to worry about climate change and these other issues.
Because we'll die before.
We're going to kill ourselves way before.
Exactly.
And I've said it a million times, social media kills, hashtag social media kills, and we're in bad shape. I fear for my kids. I really do. We'll be right back with questions from my kids, with 3 questions from Grandma, for Grandma.
It's time now for 3 questions for Grandma.
One day I'll ask them the question. It's a good idea.
That's actually a great idea, Carm. We're back with 3 questions for Grandma. I don't know if you heard it. Carm said one day she's going to ask them the questions. That's actually a good way to flip the script, as they say. I thought this was an interesting one. This comes from my beloved Vida Aliyah, who's now in her 4th week of jiu-jitsu and showing me moves. It's making me proud. She asks, who makes up your last name? She's like, I know we're Waldmans, and you're a Waldman, and your dad was a Waldman, and your grandfather was a Waldman, but how did we get the name Waldman to begin with?
Vida, I wish I could say something.
And if my last name was Vanderbilt, I wouldn't be asking this question because I wouldn't have this podcast because I'd be sitting on my boat, my yacht, like Anderson Cooper.
Anyway, our names were given to us in various ways, but one of them, for example, I'll give you an example. My mother's...
Carm, I think you did take something ahead of this, and you're moving very slow today.
I'm moving as fast as I can, but you are a little nervous. Let me say something. The names are unbelievably arbitrary, and there is and I'll tell you details when I see you. Arbitrary means that they were decided by people maybe 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago in Europe, and it
really can change a name can really change your life, and I'll give you an example.
Skunk, if your last name is Skunk.
I was so impressed. I went to the University of Miami, orthopedic whatever. It's run by the University of Miami. And my orthopedist, who is referred to me by the great Max Bykoff, my neighbor, said, you got to go to this guy. What is his name? Dr. Thomas Best. And when I was there, I said, has this helped your career? And he said, oddly enough, I think it has, because it's free advertising. If my name was Joel Best, there would be no Lester Holt, because I'd be anchoring the nightly news on NBC. Waldman doesn't cut it. Best would. I screwed myself with my name. On to the next question. This one comes from my beloved Z-Bugs. It's a two-parter, which takes us to 3 questions. Who is the first one that found out that God is real? And how long does God live? Part 2.
I'll answer the second part first.
Please do.
God lives forever. Forever is a very difficult concept, difficult thought.
Sort of like death, which is also a difficult concept, that it's all going to come to a screeching halt one day. But how do we know that God is real, Carm?
I don't.
You don't. I once heard that it is actually part of Judaism. I think this is part in the Talmud, that it says, to be a true Jew, you need to question the existence of God. Is there a God?
No, you can still be within the boundaries of Judaism if you are an agnostic, questioning the existence of God. But if you become an atheist, you kind of put yourself outside.
Carmen, that is the show. Let me just wrap by saying this. I have had a headache all week. Both my wife and I don't know if other people are feeling this way, are just stressed out. This pandemic has been long. Life has been long. I'm constantly worried about money. Is any of this ever going to end?
Yes. That's the beauty.
I didn't mean that way. Anyway, guys, any parting words, Carm, as we close out and say goodbye?
The other day,
I swear to God, I just started a college fund for JMAC. I seriously don't know if I'm going to send my kids to college, and I'm not kidding when I say that.
Who was it? We know somebody who gave his college, the cost of college, the amount of money to their kid to start a business, and they're a billionaire. Who is that?
His name's Mark Zuckerberg. His name is Jeff Bezos.
No.
His name is Elon Musk. None of these guys went to Mark Cuban. Well, Cuban graduated from Indiana.
Now, can I just say, let the people go. Let my people go.
Let my people go.
Okay, enjoy the week.
That's actually a good sig out. Let my people go. Love you, America. We'll be back next week.
Bye.